Welcome to ShiftWatch. I'm your host, Starbuck. In this episode, understanding seismic activity with someone who has proven his expertise in predicting them as well as anyone can. I chose this from Dutchsinse to help illustrate what's going on with the plate boundaries, especially with respect to those within the United States. Next, the latest wave of large sunspots are making their way around the Earth-facing limb of the sun, and they have some size. Expect energetic disruptions. Here are updates from Nemesis Maturity and Suspicious Observers revisits the wandering of the magnetic poles. Then, life in Telos. Do you have light? From Sharula Duck's Lemurian Princess. And finally, receiving a recalibration with regard to my vibration level on Dr. David Hawkins' map of consciousness.
Over the next several days as well, we should expect an increase in the United States off the West Coast, and we'll figure out where to watch. Right now, we're dealing with a 4.6 on the Blanco fracture zone. It's a volcanic segment out here off the west coast of the United States. We'll show you on the USGS map. There we go. There's the Juan de Fuca fracture zone. It's like a lightning bolt shape in its own right, stair step or a zigzag shape. Now, those jagged edges belong to the Pacific plate, even though the fractured old plate that's there is being pushed underneath North America, supposedly. Right there along the plate boundary, nothing but volcanoes. Let me show you. We'll go over to Google Earth. And let me make sure my volcanism program segments are turned on there. There we go. Here's the East Blanco Depression. There's the Gorda Ridge segment. And all the volcanoes in here, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you there's a bunch of volcanoes in here. These are not erupting right now, at least there was one erupting up here at the axial seamount several years ago. But no eruptions going on now as far as I know. Just seismic going on as the plate boundary shifts. And it's the same size as the rest of the plate boundary shifting currently. I mean, it's in 4.6. What's the difference between 4.6 off the west coast of the United States and a 4.7 from yesterday off the coast of Mexico? Both of them, let's show you Mexico or Central America. This is going to make sense in like 2 seconds. So 4.6 to 4.7 up here. Now let's go down and look. Right down here, 4.6 to 4.7 yesterday. What are they tied to? Both sections on the plate boundary next to the Pacific on the east side, spreading out, equidistantly spaced. What do you want to bet? If we go look, we're going to find another equidistantly spaced 4.6 to 4.7, about the same distance from here to here as from here to down here. I'll just go look to see. So 4.6 to 4.7 there, 4.6 to 4.7 there, same distance to the south. What do we got? Let's zoom in and see. 4.4, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and a 4.1. Let's add them together. 4.3 plus 4.2 is equal 4.42. Plus another 4.4 is equal 4.56. Plus another 4.1 is 4.66. And plus another 4.1 is 4.71. So, or 4.77. So in other words, if you take all these smaller 4s and add them together, it equals the exact same size as the 4.7 there and the 4.6 to 4.7 there. And the spread is 10,000 miles from peak to peak to peak as this wave spread out across that distance in 2 days' time, coming up there, coming up or here, here, and here. Now, the new spots in between them will get struck by a larger earthquake. So Mexico's in the mix, like I said, for 5.5 level activity. Now let's look at the United States. Going across the rest of the plate, where do we even begin? First of all, this is where I get in trouble. Start looking up locations in the United States. Start finding all kinds of weird stuff, right? Like, why are the earthquakes striking there as opposed to anywhere else? Well, we'll start at places that are not going to get me in trouble at all. For instance, a swarm of earthquakes striking inside of Yellowstone National Park. Well known, we get hundreds, if not thousands, of tremors at Yellowstone per day. But this is a stack of earthquakes, small microquakes, towards the surface that are not to be confused with tremors. The tremors are small vibrations as the magma shifts. This is actual fracturing that's happening in the plate, small, And it's normal. We get inflation and deflation that happens here along the edge of the North American craton. Let me show you that. This graphic here is going to come in handy if you're a new viewer, if you've never seen this before. Let me turn off all the numbers so you can just get the picture comparison on the earthquakes. Take a look at the craton graphic and then look at the earthquakes over the last 7 days. And if you need me to turn down the rings, I can. You'll see that there's a line of earthquakes coming in from the northwest, and it goes down through Texas and then up the East Coast, and it matches the edge of the North American craton. And why are the earthquakes going across the edge of the North American craton as opposed to just randomly striking anywhere across the plate? There's a wave that's being guided along here, and the earthquakes are just the byproduct of this wave that's equidistantly spacing these earthquakes over the last 7 days across the whole edge of the North American craton. So remember the craton diagram, and then the earthquakes over the last 2 days still show it, so we don't even have to look at the whole week. 48 hours shows us a diagonal line of earthquakes going along that edge of the craton down into Yellowstone. But it doesn't stop there. It points like an arrow almost. That's why I have arrows here pointing in that direction. I noticed back in 2011, in 2011, I noticed the earthquakes were kind of making an arrow-like shape almost, as if they were focusing in on something. And they were. They were focusing in, the arrows, the earthquakes, are focusing in on the edge of the craton. And it's this wave that's focusing in on the edge of the craton. And once it gets down here to Texas, it's forced, like a wave guide in a microwave, to force that wave around the bend of the edge of the craton itself, and it drops off earthquakes at the bend points.
Good morning, folks. Today we're going to peek in on the sun and the big sunspot group. We'll see an interesting first and stellar discoveries. We'll be out at the ranch today as well, and we are wrapping up the video with our viral tweet from yesterday on the pole shift. Let's begin with the last 24 hours on our star. Pretty quiet. We have the massive sunspot group we began watching yesterday morning, but so far it has been calm. Solar wind and geomagnetic conditions are fairly quiet as well, so let's take a closer look at the active region of sunspots. It is huge. It's got multiple umbra and a complex physical setup, but magnetically, it's far less complex than one might guess. There's very little magnetic mixing within the group, causing it to remain fairly calm in terms of flaring. It is still moving around quite a bit, so we'll keep monitoring it for an initiation of hostility today. Top thing today. With yesterday's X post hitting 1 million views already, I've learned that it was extremely helpful from the comments, so let's break it all down here. The graphic is meant to visualize the magnetic pole shift, focus on the movement of the north magnetic pole here. The data goes back to 1590, the green dot. It meandered slowly north, purple, back southward in pink, and where it begins the orange run north again was 1853, more than 260 years into the data. It then moved even further as it crept north along the orange dots over just the next 147 years, and has moved that same distance again in only the last 25 years. This one image shows the normal meander of the magnetic poles, which then switched gears into the full shift, the acceleration of its motion matching the loss of the overall magnetic field strength. The next overall update is coming out in less than a month. Eyes open. We're in the magnetic pole shift acceleration phase now. We're always watching for new details.
Many people have asked, how on earth can you live under the earth? Number one, what kind of light do you have? Or do you have light? Or are you mole people? Yes, we do have light. There is a process that a stone with a high crystalline content is fused with an electromagnetic force of energy. This infusion of energy, in essence, causes the crystalline matrix of the stone to create a polarity that allows the stone to pull in the even invisible rays and readmit them as visible light. And in essence, it becomes a small sun. Our main lighting structure throughout the city, as with the other subterranean cities, is produced by these stones. The light they produce is a full spectrum lighting, admitting all rays. In essence, this energy infusion process then makes the stone become a small sun. And the sun will burn for about 500,000 years before the crystalline matrix breaks down and the stone becomes no longer capable of functioning in this manner. So thus we have lights that will burn for many, many hundreds of thousands of years still.
So you see, these kinds of things are happening, and I was told 8 months ago, just keep opening the door to people have to share that
Yeah,
conversation.
you're busy planting seeds, and sooner or later, those are all going to start to hatch, blossom, whatever you want to see it as. That's how I see whatever's happening in the last 4 weeks since the Ethereal Edge girls showed up, and 137,000 people have watched this. Holy crap, there's
Yes.
something to this. You mentioned the Hawkins scale a moment ago. Has somebody looked at you and measured where they thought you were on the Hawkins scale? Because I'll share with you what somebody said to me.
Okay, just a sec. Before you do that, let me pull out my pendulum. Hang on.
Okay.
Because I do a party trick. I have multiple pendulums. Where did it go? Okay, hang on. Just a minute. I can't find my pendulum. It's fallen. 7, 8, 9, 1,000, 12, 13. Okay, well, you've blown the scale. So the scale goes to 1,000,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. I've had, there's a guy named Peter Roth who for years had done these 30-minute shows on the radio. And I don't know how many decades he's done it. Well, now he's kind of turned it into, something online. And Peter heard about my story. So I think we've done 5 or 6 of these things together. Well,
Okay.
Peter knew Dr. Hawkins and, understood the chart and how assisting others. So I think it was like the next to the last one we were doing together before we even begins. Peter goes 725. I went, what are you talking about? He goes, you're a 725 on the map of consciousness. He goes, do you know about Dr. Hawkins' work? You should read, Power and whatever it was. And
Power versus force.
yes, exactly. So when you said that to me and I went and looked at the scale, what? I'm holding space for 70 million others? Is that what you're telling me? And they're having trouble getting over 200?
Yeah, so that's accurate. Okay,
Yes.
so is Lowell's reading on the Hawkins scale over 1,000 at this moment in time? No? Okay. Is it 900? No. Okay, so you're holding the belief. Oh, okay. So are you holding the belief that you are at 725?
That's the only frame of reference I have.
That's true.
So
Okay.
it's interesting that you put it
750,
to me in that regard because I really hadn't
800,
thought of it that way before.
850, 900, 925, 975, 1,000, 1,200, 1,225, slowing down. Okay, so you're somewhere between 12 and 1,225. And what I've come to understand is that we can, especially if we're doing these exchanges, our frequency can be higher
No doubt.
and it can fluctuate and it can change. And so
Yes.
I thought that once you reached 700, that's it, you're good. You're always going to be at 700. But there's a fluctuation, there's changes that are happening in all the beliefs that we've had
Right.
that we've been imprinted with. And
Yeah.
so the book was written at a time when that was the belief system and things had not shifted to the degree that they've shifted now. And so I know that I've been, I always get Tom, my healing partner, to do it because first of all, I don't want to be biased.
Right.
And secondly, I like to check my numbers. So I will say to him, I'll check myself. And then I'll send him a text and say, Tom, can you check whether this number is a yes or a no? And so he goes into, he does the work too. And he'll say, it's a yes. Oh, okay. So it is at 1,200 today. Okay. That's
Well, thank you. I had no frame of reference. So,
Mhm.
you take the information that you're given and that's your foundation. I hadn't really had an opportunity to have this conversation with anybody else who was knowledgeable about the topic to give me kind of a recalibration. So thank you.
You're welcome. And that's one of the things that I did yesterday in front of this gal who's a social worker. And I said, do you know what the Hawkins scale is? She says, well, I think I've heard of it. Like, well, I just tested one of the leaders here, and they're on 100. Do
Yeah.
you know what kind of suppression that holds on a collective as a leader?
That's dragging down energy, that's for sure.